On December 6th, women's organizations across Canada gathered to pay tribute to the 14 women who lost their lives in a mass shooting at L'École Polytechnique. Due to COVID, this year we are remembering them and the other women who lost their lives to violence in a virtual tribute. We will always remember 2020 as the year of the COVID-19 pandemic. During COVID, people were being told to stay home, but we know that home is not a safe place for many women. There is another pandemic coexisting with COVID, the shadow pandemic. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, emerging data and reports from those on the front lines have shown that all types of violence against women and girls, particularly domestic violence, has intensified. As COVID-19 cases continue to strain our health services, essential services such as emergency violence shelters and helplines have reached capacity. Initially, our crisis phone lines were eerily quiet, but the calls we did receive were of some of the most horrific abuse we have ever seen. Women were trapped and could not get away from their abusers, day or night. The level of violence was exacerbated by the lockdown. Isolation with abusers, increased tensions in the home due to security, health, and money worries, cramped living conditions, restricted movements, and empty public spaces. We will also remember this year, just as we were struggling with so much loss resulting from the COVID pandemic, that on April 18th in Portapique, Nova Scotia, a man impersonating as a police officer went on a killing spree, killing 23 people, some of whom were known to him. The night of terror began after he assaulted and tied up his common-law partner, who managed to escape and hide in the woods. He had a history of violence and domestic abuse. Before the courts right now is the Toronto van killer, who drove his van into 26 people, killing 16, 14 of them women. The killer stated that he had completed his mission and says that he planned and committed the van attack as part of an incel rebellion. The incel movement blames women for the involuntary celibacy of some men, and this killer described how he was sexually rejected and ridiculed by women. And most recently, the family of 6 in Oshawa. 3 of the children and the father were killed in front of the mother before the killer, the mother's brother, shot himself. This over a family estate, and to ensure his sister suffered over her beloved family's deaths. There's a term for these kind of men. Mary Ellen O'Toole, an FBI profiler, refers to these men as injustice collectors, men who see every interaction as negative and adversarial. They keep a tally, they keep score, and they vow to get even. It's their way of seeing the world. Michael Arnfield, a professor and criminologist at Western University, says that injustice collectors are disproportionately middle-aged males who have tabulated an inventory of every perceived slight over the course of their lives. They can nurture grudges for years. They often feel cheated or disrespected by others, even though there may be no evidence to support those beliefs. And these negative thoughts often get stuck on an endless, self-fulfilling loop. A study done by the Canadian Domestic Homicide Prevention Initiative for vulnerable populations found that between 2010 and 2018, there were 662 domestic homicide victims. Overwhelmingly, these victims were women and children. In the spring of this year, a 50-year-old woman was killed in her home in Mississauga. A beautiful 22-year-old woman from Curve Lake had her head beaten so badly by her boyfriend of 3 years, she ended up in hospital with a life-threatening brain injury in a coma. And a 27-year-old woman was shot to death by her boyfriend, who was on a non-contact order for a previous violent incident. None of these crimes against women should have happened. When the Ontario Association for Interval and Transition Houses releases the homicide list this year, there will be many more women on that list. Yet the headlines of these deaths, this epidemic of violence against women, is news today and forgotten tomorrow. Just as it is being reported that we are becoming desensitized to COVID, we have long since become desensitized to the killing of women. Intimate partner violence is a strong indicator that the person has a capability to be violent towards others. It is the normalization and the acceptance of this violence that leads to these mass gender killings. So what can we do? We need to recognize the underlying attitudes and beliefs that normalize and perpetuate smaller acts of violence. We need to recognize that violence against women, the attitude of male entitlement towards women, perpetuates an environment that leads to these deadly rampages. We need stricter laws to deal with minor abuse, events such as stalking, harassment, and cyberbullying. We know that changing men's mindsets is vital to address this situation. We need to teach our boys and men healthy and nonviolent ways to address their personal issues. We need to reimagine the societal and systemic definition of what it is to be a man. There are programs designed to promote healthier ideas about masculinity and gender equity to middle school and high school students, but we need more of them. And we need nonviolent men to serve as role models, mentors, and allies in speaking up and out about the violence in all its forms. We must take this action now to end this pandemic, the pandemic that is violence against women. I would now like to invite Bonnie O'Neill to come up and read the names of the 14 women who lost their lives at L'École Polytechnique.
31 years ago, on December 6th, 1989, these 14 women lost their lives. Their dreams came to an end. Anne-Marie Lemay. She was in 4th year mechanical engineering. Anne-Marie Edouard. She loved outdoor sports like skiing, diving, and riding, and was always surrounded by friends. She was studying chemical engineering. Annie Saint-Arnaud. She was a mechanical engineering student from La Tuque, Quebec, a Laurentian pulp and paper town in the upper Saint Maurice River Valley. She lived in a small apartment in Montreal. Her friends considered her a fine student. She was killed as she sat listening to a presentation in her last class before graduation. She had a job interview with Alcan Aluminum scheduled for the following day. She had talked about eventually getting married to the man who had been her boyfriend since she was a teenager. Annie Turcotte. She was in her 1st year of engineering and lived with her brother in a small apartment near the university. She was described as gentle and athletic. She was a diver and a swimmer. She went into metallurgical engineering so she could one day help improve the environment. Barbara Daignon. She was to graduate at the end of the year. She was a teaching assistant for her father Pierre Dagnon, a mechanical engineering professor with the city's other French language engineering school at the Université de Québec à Montréal. Barbara Kluknik-Wida-Juiza. She was a first-year nursing student. She arrived from Poland with her husband in 1987. Geneviève Bergeron. She was a second-year scholarship student in mechanical engineering. She played the clarinet and sang in a professional choir. In her spare time, she played basketball and swam. Hélène Colgan. She was in her final year of mechanical engineering. She had plans to go on to get a master's degree. She had 3 job offers and was leaning toward accepting one from a Toronto area company. Marisa Lagagnère. She was the only non-student killed. She worked in the budget department of the engineering school. She had recently been married. Marisa Leclerc. She was in 4th year metallurgy. She had just a year to go before graduation. She was one of the top students in the school. She acted in plays in junior college. She was the first victim whose name was known because she was found by her father, Montreal Police Lieutenant Pierre Leclerc. Maude Aviernik. She was a second-year student in metallurgical engineering and a graduate in environmental design from the Université de Québec à Montréal. Michelle Richard. She was in second-year metallurgical engineering. She was presenting a paper with Aviernik when she was killed. Nathalie Croteau. She was another graduating mechanical engineer. She had planned to take a 2-week vacation in Cancun, Mexico, with Colgan at the end of the month. Sonia Pelletier. She was the head of her class and the pride of Saint-Henri, Quebec, her remote birthplace in the Gaspé Peninsula. She had 5 sisters and 2 brothers. She was killed the day she was to graduate with a degree in mechanical engineering. She had a job interview lined up for the following week. For those of you watching here today, and for those of you who have found the strength to move on from the violence and challenges in your lives, may the roses represent not only those who died on December 6, 1989, but also your dreams. And the candles, may they burn not only in remembrance today, but for hope.
Hello, my name is Amy Farr. I'm a police officer with the City of Kawartha Lakes Police Service and currently hold the role of Domestic Violence Coordinator. On December 6, 1989, 14 young and intelligent female engineering students were killed at the University of Montreal, École Polytechnique. All of the victims were chosen and targeted because of their gender, because they were women. It saddens me to think that these remarkable ladies would be in their 50s now. They would be mothers or maybe grandmothers and would be likely well advanced in their engineering careers. But their lives were taken from them, all because one man's deep-seated hatred against women. Unfortunately, 31 years later, women and girls are still being killed in Canada due to violence. The Nova Scotia shooting in April of this year was yet another massacre that started as a result of a domestic violence incident. But there are a lot more victims that don't get the same sensational media attention. A large majority of victims are killed in their homes by their intimate partners. Devastatingly, the closer the relationship between the female and the perpetrator, the less shocking the crime is to the public, and it is viewed as expected, normal, unpredictable, and therefore unpreventable. This belief needs to stop. According to statistics from the Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability, 136 women and children were killed by violence in Canada in 2019. 59% were killed in their own home by their current or former partner. The highest percentage of victims were over 55 years old, and 38% of victims were from small towns or rural areas. And 118 children were left without mothers because of these killings. We need to do better. These statistics hit me hard, for in addition to being a police officer in a small rural community, I'm a mother of 2 daughters, a daughter and a granddaughter myself. Last year, I took on the position of domestic violence coordinator with the Kawartha Lakes Police Service, and I would not be able to do this difficult job without the assistance and support from multiple community agencies. I'm in awe of our community's collaborative efforts. Women's Resources and Kawartha Lakes Victim Services go above and beyond for victims of domestic violence. I have continuously relied on them for safety planning, emergency shelter, long-term housing, counseling, and family court support. I have never met a more dedicated and passionate group of people. They are available at all hours of the day and night and are devoted to ensuring that women and children in Kawartha Lakes are safe. The Kawartha Haliburton Children's Aid Society does an amazing job keeping tabs on high-risk victims, and the John Howard Society of Kawartha Lakes and Haliburton works diligently with the offenders in the PAR program to change their point of view and break the cycle of violence. These are just a few organizations, but there are many more in our community that help make a difference. I am proud of our community response, but it is still not enough to manage this complex problem. The current favorable climate for intimate partner violence with the COVID-19 pandemic is also of great concern. The social distancing prevents victims from accessing community resources and forces them to be isolated with their abuser. This is a unique challenge that is going to take a collaborative and creative approach to manage. Last year, I came to this vigil and I listened to a presentation by Chief Mark Mitchell. He stated that the response to domestic violence is not about laying charges, it's about saving lives. It won't be solved by the police or the courts or any one agency alone. Everyone has a role to play, and I couldn't agree more. Today, we remember and mourn those who lost their lives. Tomorrow, we work together to honor them and find new, multifaceted ways to stop the violence. Thank you.
We are pleased to have Raina McHugh join us today for the ceremony. Raina is 19 years old and a second-year student at Trent University, studying in psychology and gender studies. She is a singer in her free time and a full-time activist.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away, wonder this time where she's gone. Wonder if she's gone. I know